Oslo 2022 was a campaign by Oslo and the Norwegian Olympic and Paralympic Committee and Confederation of Sports for the right to host the 2022 Winter Olympics. This bid was cancelled on October 1, 2014, after the parliamentary caucus of the Conservative Party had voted to not support the bid. Already, the Progress Party, Centre Party and Socialist Left Party were opposed to the bid. Thus, it was no longer possible to get a parliamentary majority for a state guarantee. The IOC selected Beijing as the host city for the 2022 Winter Olympics from the two remaining bids at the 127th IOC Session in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia on July 31, 2015. Background: the Norwegian Olympic Committee originally planned a bid for the 2018 Winter Olympics. 3 cities announced interest: Tromsø, Trondheim and Oslo. After assessing the plans and a technical evaluation, the NOC board voted 7-6 in favor of Tromsø. However, September 30, 2008 an external revision demonstrated the games would cost far more than originally suggested, the total public net cost being estimated at 19.1 billion NOK. This prompted the Norwegian Olympic Committee to withdraw the bid October 6, 2008, citing inter alia responsibility to avoid unwarranted public spending. The decision caused strong negative reactions. Then board member and later president, Barari Ronlien, recognized in 2014 that citing responsibility of public spending was unwise. In January 2010, Gerard Heiberg, IOC member from Norway, announced that the IOC would welcome a bid from Norway to host the Winter Olympic Games. Lillehammer, host of the 1994 Winter Olympics, and the area Stavanger Bergen-Voss were considered contenders. Tromsø also showed interest. However, Oslo was selected without much public deliberation in October 2011 after the 7 major winter sports organizations decided to back the capital. There were negative reactions from several supporters of the Tromsø 2018 bid. MP Ann-Marit Bjørnflot suggested that Tromsø 2018 was cancelled not due to timing or costs, but geography. On June 9, 2012, the annual assembly of the Norwegian Confederation of Sports voted in favor of the Oslo 2022 bid with a majority of 142-15. Oslo's City Council decided to hold a local public referendum on whether or not the city would move forward with the bid. This was held in Oslo on September 9, 2013. The bid was supported by a majority of 55%. Around the same time, the Socialist Left decided not to back the bid, the first political party to adopt a position on a national level. Application for state funding and financial guarantee. The pivotal issue in pushing the bid forward was obtaining state funding and an unlimited state financial guarantee, as required by the Olympic Charter June 19, 2013. The Norwegian Olympic Committee and Oslo had put forward their application for funding and guarantee to the Ministry of Culture. Eventually the cabinet would have to present the issue to the Norwegian Parliament, Storting, as the constitution gives the parliament power of the budget. The application for state funding was put through a legally required quality assurance review. DNVGL conducted the assessment. On December 20, 2013 they presented their conclusion in which they concluded that the bid was without significant weaknesses, and that the public net costs would probably end on 21.7 billion Norwegian kroner, and with 85% certainty below 25.8 billion Norwegian kroner. The next step following the review of DNVGL was to have the Ministry of Culture forward the application to the Parliament. Before this was executed, the bid had been withdrawn. Applicant City Phase, November 12, 2013, Oslo sent their formal letter to be an applicant city in the bidding for the 2022 Games. Oslo was joined by 5 other cities, Beijing, Almaty, Stockholm, Krakow and Lviv. However, Stockholm dropped out of the race 2 months later due to lack of local political support. Barari Ronlien had originally stated that the Norwegian Olympic Committee required public support of 60% of the population to move forward with the bid. This was also presented as a requirement from IOC. However, building public support proved hard. Just prior to the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, support was lagging at 38%. Despite being a success in medals, the Sochi Games was a further hit for the Oslo bid. Controversies around IOC reprimanding the Norwegian cross-country skiers for wearing mourning bands, as well as general criticism concerning costs and other issues made support drop even further. Shortly after Sochi, a poll suggested that support had dropped to 32.6%. March 9, 2014, former leader of the Norwegian Confederation of Sports, Hans Biskaset, explained how the Olympic Charter secured IOC control of the event, while leaving the financial risk with the host city. The Minister of Culture, Thorhild Bay, responded by declaring that the Norwegian government would reserve itself against the relevant provisions of the Olympic Charter. Oslo sent the candidate application file March 14. The Norwegian Minister of Culture, Thorhild Bay, did not, as IOC require, provide a full guarantee of respecting the Olympic Charter. Instead, Bay wrote that their guarantee should not be understood to mean that the government has agreed to comply with all provisions of the Olympic Charter. However, this was withdrawn by the end of April after a short exchange of letters with the IOC, who rejected such a reservation. May 4, 2014, the Progress Party voted no to provide a state financial guarantee for the Olympic bid at their annual conference. Prime Minister Erna Solberg declared the following day that this did not affect the government's assessment of whether or not to support the bid. In response to the decision of the Progress Party, Thorhild Bay went public with her support of the bid May 15, 2014. By summer, 2 other applicant cities had withdrawn their bids, leaving Oslo, Beijing and Almaty as the only applicant cities. Candidate city phase and withdrawal of bid, Oslo, Beijing and Almaty were accepted as candidate cities by IOC on July 7, 2014. The IOC Working Group report gave Oslo the highest technical ratings. The Norwegian capital led in 8 of the 14 categories and was tied with Beijing in 3. With pollings in June 2014 running as low as 29% and 24%, the requirement of 60% support Barari Ronlian previously had stated was called off. During the summer, the bid was able to get backing from key public figures, leader of the Norwegian Confederation of Trade Unions, Gerd Christiansen, as well as the leader of Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise, Kristin Skijjenlund, went public with their support of the bid. Oslo 2022 also got the support of Norwegian Young Conservatives. However, the youth division of the other 7 major political parties opposed the bid. Thorhild Bay had not informed the public that the reservation towards the Olympic Charter had been withdrawn. In the beginning of August, this became known and caused considerable reactions. In an attempt to drum up support, both in public and in Parliament, Oslo 2022 presented a cheaper option to hosting the Games September 4, 2014. This would reduce the net cost of the public from 21.7 billion Norwegian kroner to 17.4 billion Norwegian kroner. However, Oslo 2022 still recommended and stood by their original proposal. As an alleged strategic move to establish a yes in the caucus of the Conservative Party to facilitate for the cabinet to support the bid, the caucus set to discuss the bid prior to the cabinet taking a position. This was set to occur early in October. According to several media sources, the parliamentary caucus had a solid majority in favor of the bid at this point. However, the last couple of days leading up to the deliberation in the Conservative Party consisted of a series of negative developments for the bid. Those negative developments included the Centre Party saying no through a grassroots vote, a poll showing that even within the Norwegian Confederation of Sports the majority of members opposed the bid, an external revision which clarified that the newly suggested cheaper budget was unrealistic and public scrutiny on IOC's 7,000 pages of demands. The discussion of the caucus were held in private. After the discussions, the parliamentary leader Trond Helleland explained that the caucus was divided roughly on the middle. The conclusion of the caucus was that this was not an adequate basis for moving forward with the bid. Thus, their recommendation to the cabinet was to turn down the application for a state guarantee and state funding. Various members of the Conservative Party cited lack of public support and enthusiasm, high costs and unreasonable IOC requirements as the main reasons for the caucus' negative decision. The conclusion meant that a majority of the members of parliament were now opposed to the bid, leading Oslo 2022 to withdraw its application for state funding and financial guarantee. No party had supported the bid at the national level, but the Labour Party, Liberal Party and Christian Democratic Party remained undecided through the process. Aftermath. Immediately following the bid withdrawal, IOC released a statement on Oslo 2022 calling it a missed opportunity for Norway. The statement also included strong criticism of the bid leadership and government, claiming that neither a senior member of the bid team nor a government official attended a meeting held by IOC to clarify important issues concerning the Games. IOC claims senior politicians in Norway appear not to have been properly briefed on the process and were left to take their decisions on the basis of half-truths and factual inaccuracies. Bid chair Stian Berger Rarsand rejected these claims, calling IOC arrogant. Thorhildidve dubbed the IOC claims as very sensational, stating that the IOC's claims were not genuine. "We have not been invited to a meeting," Idve added. Conservative MP Svein Harberg, a prominent supporter of the bid, commented the attack from IOC stating, "I was quite shocked about this. At first I was angry when I looked at it. But now I realize that it just shows we made the right decision." The Oslo City Council was presented with an evaluation of the bid process December 2014. CEO of Oslo 2022, Eli Grimsby, presented the evaluation with the main conclusion that the distance between the spirit of the Norwegian people and the Olympic movement was too large. Grimsby further stated that the major challenges were in connection with the host city contract, which he labeled unbalanced, and as putting too much a burden on the host city. The Norwegian Confederation of Sports also initiated an evaluation on its own. The results were presented March 25, 2015. The evaluation concluded among other things that the bid suffered from poor communication, bad organization, and lack of support on the grassroots level of the sporting confederation. Technical details of the bid. Financial details. In the application for state funding and financial guarantee, Oslo 2022 calculated gross total costs at 33.7 billion Norwegian kroner. The External Quality Control Review increased the estimate to up to 35.1 billion Norwegian kroner with 50% certainty, and up to 41.0 billion Norwegian kroner with 85% certainty. Those numbers may not accurately reflect what would have been the final number. Generally, the Norwegian quality control system have shown a bias at underestimating costs. In addition, a study at Saudi Business School showed that the Olympics had a 100% consistency of cost overruns in the period 1960 to 2012, with the average cost overrun in real terms at 179%. In the period 1999 to 2012, the average cost overrun is lower, in real terms at 47%. The 21.7 billion net cost was based on 700 million Norwegian kroner in income, and a total of 29,360 million Norwegian kroner in public expenditure. The public expenditure included an organizational budget for the Organizational Committee of 17,510 million Norwegian kroner, of which 2,800 million Norwegian kroner was costs of renting the Olympic Village, Media Center and Media Village. 570 million Norwegian kroner were budgeted spent on construction investment. 250 million Norwegian kroner were budgeted in non-organization committee operational costs. 330 million Norwegian kroner were budgeted to cover wage increases, while 420 million Norwegian kroner were set aside to cover uncertainty of cost overruns. DNVGL also conducted a socio-economical assessment, concluding that for the economy overall the Games overall led to a negative net result of 15,890 million Norwegian kroner in monetary terms. Of the positive non-monetary effects, enjoyable events and the predicted nationwide enthusiasm was considered the most significant. Non-monetary effects aside, the Games would leave a legacy with a socio-economical worth of 2.45 billion Norwegian kroner. This included mainly sporting venues, infrastructure improvement and investment in security equipment. Aside from the legacy, the difference between the public net cost of 21 7 billion Norwegian kroner and the overall negative net result of 15.89 billion Norwegian kroner consisted mainly of discounting the future cost to present value and positive effects for the tourism industry valued at 1,780 million Norwegian kroner. The review considered the socio-economic costs of tax financing the event at 30 million Norwegian kroner. The effects for the tourism industry were contested in the public debate, as research gives little support of a correlation between hosting the Olympics and increased tourism. In the socio-economical assessment, the Quality Control Review removed an alleged 4.9 billion Norwegian kroner in positive effects of improved health in the population, finding no basis for the claim that hosting the Olympics increases physical activity in the population. Venues. The Oslo 2022 proposal included existing venues around Oslo itself, with a goal of hosting as many events as possible, including snow events, within Oslo's city limits. Certain alpine events would be held in Lillehammer, which had hosted the 1994 Winter Olympics. Several new venues would also be constructed, and Valhaven would be renovated into an indoor arena. The following is the list of proposed venues for both the Oslo zone and Lillehammer zone. Oslo area, Illela Ipa Euro snowboarding, Kvsenkolene Euro freestyle, snowboarding, new arena in Stubberud Euro ice hockey, Jordal Amphia Euro ice hockey, Valhaven Euro speed skating, new arena in Lørenskog Euro curling, Telenor Arena Euro figure skating and short track, Holmenkollen Euro Nordic skiing, Gran Muhikena Euro biathlon, Lillehammer area, Kvartella Euro alpine skiing, Heala Euro alpine skiing, Hunderfossen Euro bobsleigh, luge, skeleton. Accommodation IOC requires 23,300 beds for accredited people. This requirement is a little more than the hotel overall capacity of Oslo, Lillehammer and their surrounding areas. Since spectators and other Olympic-related visitors would have to be accommodated, more rooms would be needed. As a result, there were plans to arrange for there to temporarily be at least an additional 3,000 beds for visitors. Transport Olympic visitors would arrive at Oslo Airport, which receives intercontinental flights. Road and rail connections to all venues in the Lillehammer area would be provided, including a 4-lane motorway between Oslo and Lillehammer. Previous bids: Oslo bid to host the 1932 and 1944 Winter Olympics but lost to Lake Placid and Cortina d'Ampezzo respectively. Oslo went on to successfully bid to host the 1952 Winter Olympics. The city later bid to host the 1968 Winter Olympics but lost to Grenoble. Previous bids from other Norwegian cities. Lillehammer bid to host the 1992 Winter Olympics but lost to Albertville. Lillehammer successfully bid to host the 1994 Winter Olympics. The city also bid to host the 2012 Winter Youth Olympics but failed to become a candidate. Lillehammer went on to submit an uncontested bid for the 2016 Winter Youth Olympics. References. External links: Official website of Oslo 2022.